Let me tell you something about dying from overwork. It's embarrassingly undramatic. I'm Liam Chin, 32 years old, Senior Operations Director at Horizon Tech, and I did not go out in a blaze of glory. I didn't get hit by a meteor. I didn't sacrifice myself in a hostage situation. I didn't even have the decency to collapse somewhere scenic. No. I died face down in a bowl of instant ramen at 2:13 a.m. on a Thursday 3 hours past my self-imposed deadline for a quarterly projection report that absolutely no one was going to read with any real attention. My last conscious thought was something deeply pathetic like, I should have used the Excel macro I spent 6 hours building, and then nothing. Then nothing, but louder. Then a blinding white light, which I assumed was either the afterlife, or the flickering fluorescent bulb above my desk finally achieving its lifelong goal of finishing me off. Then a voice. Congratulations, host. You have been selected for the villain redemption system. The voice was cheerful in the specific way that things are cheerful when they don't actually understand what cheerful means. Like a customer service bot that says great news before informing you your bank account has been compromised. What? I said, which felt like a reasonable response. You have been transmigrated into the Omegaverse novel Crimson Bonds of Sorrow as the character Shin Myeong, secondary antagonist and villainous stepfather to 3 children. Your role is to accumulate dark points by performing villainous actions toward your stepchildren. Failure to accumulate sufficient dark points within 3 years will result in existential deletion. Okay, pause, I said. Omegaverse. An alternate universe social structure wherein. I know what Omegaverse is. I had, unfortunately, consumed enough of the genre during my shameful lunch breaks to be intimately familiar with the concept. I'm asking why. The system does not answer why questions. Of course it doesn't. Please proceed with your assigned villainy. And if I refuse? Existential deletion. Right, I sighed. So that's the situation. Liam Chin, former senior director, current transmigrated villain, was now inhabiting the body of Shin Myeong, a man described in the original novel as having eyes like winter frost and a smile like a blade. He was an Omega, the stepfather to 3 children, and his primary narrative function was to be absolutely terrible to said children for approximately the first third of the book before getting killed in a satisfying act of comeuppance. I opened my eyes. I was standing in a bedroom that probably cost more per square meter than my entire San Francisco apartment had. The sheets were silk. The curtains were floor to ceiling. There was an actual chandelier. I stared at the ceiling, which was also expensive somehow, and did a very thorough mental accounting of my situation. 3 stepchildren who, in the original story, ended up hating me. A husband who, in the original story, didn't care enough about me to even notice my existence until it was administratively inconvenient. A system that wanted me to be actively villainous in exchange for points that would apparently let me survive. The system had been suspiciously vague about what the points actually did. 3 years. Okay, I said to the ceiling. Okay, Liam Chin, you manage a team of 87 people and a budget of 12 million. You can handle 3 kids. Excellent. Please begin accumulating dark points by being unkind to the children. I'm going to need to meet the children first. Of course. Shall I? I'll find them myself. I swung my legs off the bed, walked to the mirror, and discovered that I was apparently quite attractive in this life. The reflection showed a man with sharp features, dark hair, and the general aesthetic of someone who had never once eaten instant ramen in their life. My new body was lean, a little intimidating, with a kind of elegant bone structure that suggested old money and good genetics. Also, I smelled like cedar and winter air. That took me a moment to process. I lifted my wrist to my nose and inhaled. Definitely cedar. Something clean and cold underneath it. This body had scent glands. I was an Omega with a distinct, pleasant scent. I was going to have to think about that later, probably in a panic. But for now, I filed it away under things to process when not actively dying. Host is advised to focus on the mission, the system chimed. Getting there, I found the children in the dining room, and the first thing I noticed was that they were already staring at me like I was a particularly unpredictable weather event. The original novel's description came back to me as I looked at them. Jinyu, 15, eldest son, cold and silent, with eyes that watched everything and trusted nothing. He was sitting at the far end of the table with a book open in front of him, not reading it, just using it as a prop to hide behind. His scent was muted, controlled, but I caught something sharp underneath it. Green tea and something metallic, like a blade being sharpened. Liling, 12, middle child, daughter, fierce and prone to outbursts. She had appointed herself protector of her brothers and was sitting with her arms crossed and her chin lifted, wearing an expression that said she was fully prepared to throw her breakfast at me if necessary. Her scent was warmer, honey and something spicy like cinnamon with a hint of fire. Zainab, 7, youngest, quiet, and prone to flinching. He was the smallest, sitting very still next to his sister, holding his spoon like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to eat. His scent was the gentlest, milk and something sweet like vanilla. He smelled like a child who hadn't learned to be afraid yet, but was starting to suspect he should be. I looked at them. They looked at me. The system pinged helpfully, dark points available. Recommended actions, harsh criticism, cold dismissal, arbitrary punishment. I looked at 7-year-old Zainab, who was holding his spoon with both hands and had a small milk mustache he hadn't noticed yet. Absolutely not. But I also couldn't just be nice. The system would delete me. I needed points. Think, Liam. You managed 87 people. You gave performance reviews. You assigned consequences. That's all villains really do. They impose standards and punishments. The question is just what standards? You. I pointed at Jinyu. When is your next exam? Jinyu blinked. Whatever he'd been expecting, it wasn't that. Friday. And are you prepared for it? A pause. Adequately. That's not an answer. Are you prepared, or aren't you? His jaw tightened. I'm prepared. Show me your study schedule after breakfast. Dark points +5, intimidation of eldest child. I moved on to Liling, who was staring at me with such fierce suspicion that I half expected her to growl. She was young, but I could already tell she was going to be an alpha. That fire in her scent, the way she held herself. She had the instincts already. You, I said. What subject are you struggling with? I'm not struggling with anything. Everyone struggles with something. It's not a character flaw. It's information. She stared at me. Math. Which part of math? A longer pause. She clearly hadn't expected to be asked for specifics. Fractions. I'll get you materials. Dark points +3, condescension toward middle child. That was condescension. Offering to get her study materials was condescension? The system's dark point classification is based on the original character's behavior patterns. Any engagement with the children that positions the host as an authority figure over their education qualifies. Oh, that was actually workable. I looked at Zainab last. He was still holding his spoon. Still had the milk mustache. He looked up at me with enormous eyes and said absolutely nothing. Finish your breakfast, I said, and my voice came out softer than I'd intended. I cleared my throat. Both portions. You're too small for your age. Dark points +2, criticism of youngest child's physical development. It wasn't criticism, it was nutritional concern, but I didn't argue with the system. I sat down at the head of the table, and a servant immediately appeared with my breakfast. I ate. The children ate. They ate in the specific way that children eat when they're waiting for something terrible to happen, and it keeps not happening. Eventually, Liling couldn't stand it anymore. Aren't you going to say something horrible? She demanded. I looked up from my rice porridge. I beg your pardon? You always say something horrible at breakfast. Last week, you told Jinyu his grades were an embarrassment. The week before, you told me I had no grace. Liling, Jinyu said quietly. No, I want to know why he's just sitting there. Because I'm eating, I said. And so are you. This conversation can wait until after we're finished. Liling opened her mouth, closed it, and with visible effort picked up her chopsticks again. Jinyu was watching me with the expression of someone doing a very complicated equation. Zainab quietly finished his breakfast. After breakfast, I retreated to the study and had a private crisis. System, I said. Yes, host. Walk me through the plot again. Specifically, the part about what happens to these children in the original novel. The three stepchildren grow up under the host character's neglect and cruelty, developing severe trust issues, emotional dysregulation, and survivor instincts. Eldest son Jinyu becomes a ruthless alpha businessman who controls people as a defense mechanism. Middle daughter Liling becomes volatile and prone to self-destruction. Youngest son Zainab. Stop. I sat with that for a moment. And the husband? Wei Qingjun, alpha male lead of the novel. Technically, though he spends most of the story ignoring his family in favor of his corporate empire. His narrative arc involves realizing his failures too late. Too late meaning after I'm dead. The host character dies approximately 3 years into the narrative. Car accident. Correct. I pressed my fingers to my temple. And after I die, the children, having developed into powerful figures in their respective fields, collectively destabilize the social and political structure of the city in their grief. A significant portion of it, yes. The novel is a tragedy. A tragedy. I repeat it. I'm the villain in a tragedy. Correct. However, host's primary objective remains the accumulation of dark points through. And after 3 years, when I've collected enough points, what do I get? The system paused. This was the first time it had paused. Completion of the mission. That's not an answer. Host is not authorized to access mission completion details at this time. So you want me to be cruel to 3 children for 3 years, and in exchange you'll what? Maybe tell me what the prize is. The system assures host that mission completion will be beneficial. You're the least reassuring entity I've ever encountered, I informed it. And I once had a boss who scheduled meetings at 5 a.m. The system takes no position on comparative workplace experiences. Please focus on villainy. Fine. I'll focus on villainy. I pulled out a piece of paper and started making a list. Things that would accumulate dark points while not actually harming anyone. Imposing strict academic standards, enforcing early bedtimes, requiring chores, making them eat their vegetables. Generally being the kind of strict authority figure that. I stopped writing. I was describing my mother. I sat with that realization for a moment, then wrote, being my mother, basically. My mother, for the record, had produced one reasonably functional adult son who knew how to feed himself and file his taxes on time. The methodology had seemed quite harsh when I was 8. In retrospect, it had been mostly sensible. Okay, I said. Okay, I can work with this. The first week was, professionally speaking, a learning experience. The system's definition of dark actions was generous. When I told Jinyu to show me his study notes, and then pointed out 3 factual errors, the system gave me 15 dark points for undermining the child's confidence in his own abilities. When I told Liling that stomping down the hallway at midnight was unacceptable, and that she needed to sleep at proper hours, I got 12 points for authoritarian control over daily freedom. When I cut Zainab off in the middle of his 3rd cup of juice and said that was enough sugar for one evening, I got 8 points for emotional deprivation. The system, I concluded, had a very particular idea of what children needed. The children, for their part, had apparently been expecting something much worse, because they kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was the end of the 2nd week when Liling ambushed me in the hallway, with the expression of someone who had decided to get answers or die trying. What are you doing? She demanded. Walking to my office, I said. No. I mean, what are you doing? She gestured vaguely at the air between us. You're being different. You told me my fractions homework was mostly correct with room for improvement. That's not what you say. What do I usually say? You usually say it's terrible, and I should be embarrassed. I looked at her. She was 12, and she had her chin up the way she always did when she was scared of something. She was wearing pajamas with small cartoon tigers on them that she had clearly not noticed were inside out. Her honey cinnamon scent was sharp with anxiety. "Your homework was mostly correct," I said. "I'm not going to lie to you about it. But your pajamas are inside out." She looked down. "Oh, go fix them." And liling, she looked up. "The improvement you need to make is in showing your work, not in the answers themselves. Your instincts are sound. You're just not documenting your process." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned around and went to fix her pajamas. Dark points +8. Unsolicited criticism of child's clothing choices. That wasn't... I started to think, then stopped. Fine. Points were points. The husband, Wei Cheng-jun, was an entirely different problem. In the original novel, he was described as handsome in a severe way that statues are handsome, impressive to look at, fundamentally cold, and unlikely to comfort you in a crisis. He was almost never home. When he was home, he was in his study. He did not eat family meals. He did not attend school events. He had married the original Shen Meiyang for reasons the novel never fully clarified and spent approximately the entire story ignoring the results of that decision. He was also an alpha, a powerful one. I could smell it even from across the house, something deep and resonant, like sandalwood and smoke and the particular weight of authority. His scent was everywhere, permeating the walls, marking the territory. It was the kind of presence that made you aware of your own omega biology in a way that was frankly inconvenient. I caught glimpses of him in the first 2 weeks, a tall man moving through the house with the brisk efficiency of someone passing through a lobby. He looked at me with the polite blankness of someone who had categorized me as household furniture, anime variety, and filed me accordingly. Our first actual interaction happened on a Thursday evening. I was sitting at the kitchen table with Zainab, walking him through what I had labeled Life Skills Hour, but which the system had helpfully classified as forced performance of domestic labor to humiliate the child. The task in question was folding laundry. Zainab was 7. Folding laundry was an age-appropriate skill. The system and I had very different child-rearing philosophies. Zainab was extremely focused on a washcloth, his small tongue poking out the corner of his mouth as he attempted to achieve perfect corners. "Like this?" he asked. "Almost. You got the right motion, but your hand placement is off here." I adjusted his grip. "Try again." He'd try again. This time the fold was clean. His face did something complicated and delighted. "I did it." "You did." I moved the washcloth to the done pile. "Next one." He grabbed the next washcloth with renewed enthusiasm. It was at this point that I became aware we were being watched. I looked up. Wei Cheng-jun was standing in a kitchen doorway, holding a cup of tea he'd apparently come to refill, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. His sandalwood smoke scent was stronger up close, wrapping around me like something possessive, even though he wasn't doing anything. I met his eyes. He met mine. "He's learning to fold laundry," I said because someone had to say something. "I can see that," Wei Cheng-jun said. Another pause. "Papa," Zainab said, not looking up from his washcloth. "I can do corners now. Baba taught me." Baba. The system had informed me that was the designation the children used for the host character, differentiating from their birth father. It had said this with the same tone it used for everything, which was to say aggressively neutral. I had not yet figured out how I felt about being called Baba by 3 children I'd known for 2 weeks. Wei Cheng-jun looked at his youngest son, folding laundry with methodical determination, and something moved through his expression that I couldn't identify. "Good," he said finally. Then he refilled his tea and left. Dark points +4. Instrumentalizing youngest child to perform domestic tasks. Instrumentalizing, I thought. It's folding laundry. Month 2 brought a development I had not anticipated. The children started coming to me voluntarily. Not all at once. Gradually, in the specific way that stray animals come close to something new, one cautious step at a time, ready to bolt. Jinyu came first, because Jinyu was the eldest, and had apparently decided that if something was going to happen, he would happen to it first rather than wait. He knocked on my study door one evening and presented himself in the doorway, holding a stack of practice exams. "I wanted your opinion," he said, "on which weaknesses to prioritize before Friday." He set the exams on my desk with the careful precision of someone who had rehearsed this action. "You said my last answer was technically correct but strategically limited." I wanted to understand what that meant. I looked at the exams, then at him. 15 years old, deliberately composed, eyes that watched everything and trusted nothing, except that right now, they were watching me with something that was cautiously, tentatively starting to resemble something other than wariness. His scent was still guarded, but underneath the green tea and steel, I caught something else. Something almost hopeful. "Sit down," I said. "Let's go through them." We spent 2 hours on it. I hadn't been a straight-A student myself. I'd been practical rather than academically brilliant, but I knew how to identify patterns and errors, and I knew that Jinyu's problem wasn't knowledge. It was that he second-guessed himself and then overcorrected. I told him this. He was quiet for a moment. "No one's ever said that before. It's observable in your work. You get the right answer, then you doubt it and change it. Stop doing that." "How?" "Check your work once, systematically, and then commit. Don't revisit unless you find a concrete error. Doubt without evidence is just noise." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded, gathered his papers, and left. At the door, he stopped. Didn't turn around. "Thank you," he said. Dark points plus 20, emotional manipulation of eldest child through false mentorship. False mentorship? I stared at the system notification for a long moment. I just told him to trust himself. But 20 points was 20 points, and I was not in a position to argue with the math. Liling came to me approximately a week later, and she came in the way that Liling did everything, directly with her chin up, in a manner that suggested she had considered backing down and rejected it on principle. "I want to learn to cook," she announced. "All right. The servants cook everything." I don't know how she paused, and I could see her recalibrating in real time. That's inefficient in practical terms. She had clearly prepared an argument for why this request was not sentimental or vulnerable in any way, and I had agreed too quickly for her to deploy it. She looked slightly thrown off. Her honey cinnamon scent spiked with confusion. "Sunday mornings are free," I said. "We can use the kitchen then." "Okay. Do you have a specific dish in mind, or should we start with basics?" "Basics. Eggs first. Then." She nodded, turned to go, and then turned back. "Why are you being like this?" she demanded. "Like what?" "Like a person. I considered this. I've always been a person. You know what I meant." I didn't, actually. I also knew that the honest answer, because I'm not actually Shin Mei-young. I'm a project manager from a world without Omegaverse who died eating instant noodles and got dropped into your life by a system that thinks me telling you to sleep at reasonable hours constitutes villainy, was not available to me. I had a bad habit of taking things out on the wrong people, I said instead. "I'm trying to be better." She stared at me for a moment that stretched like taffy. Then, "Okay." And she left. Dark points plus 5, gaslighting middle child with false personal growth narrative. I give up, I thought, at the system. I genuinely give up trying to understand your classification system. The system appreciates hosts' continued dedication. Zainab did not come to me so much as he began to exist near me with increasing frequency. He would appear in the study while I was working and sit down and draw pictures without saying anything. He would materialize next to me in the garden and watch me read for 10 minutes and then wander off. He was like a small, extremely quiet satellite that had shifted its orbit. His warm vanilla milk scent would precede him everywhere, a gentle presence that made the house feel less empty. One afternoon, I looked up from my work, and he was sitting on the floor next to my desk, carefully lining up a collection of small rocks he had apparently been gathering from the garden. "Zainab," I said, "what are you doing?" "Organizing," he said. By what system? He considered this very seriously. Color. Then size. That's a reasonable approach. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his rocks. I went back to my work. After a while, Baba. Yes. Are you going to go away? I set down my pen. What makes you ask that? Zainab carefully aligned a gray pebble with two others. Things that are nice usually go away. I sat with that for a moment. The original novel's version of Shin Mei-yong would, in fact, go away, would continue to be terrible until his death at the end of the 3-year timeline. The original Zainab would have learned from a very young age that good things ended. I'm not planning to go anywhere, I said. It wasn't a complete answer, and I knew it wasn't a complete answer. The car accident was a fixed plot point, and I didn't know yet if I could change it. But Zainab seemed to take it as sufficient. He went back to organizing his rocks. Dark points +3, false reassurance given to youngest child. The system, I had decided, was genuinely unhinged. 3 months in, Wei Cheng-jun started paying attention. I wasn't sure when it happened exactly. One day he was furniture to me, and I was furniture to him. The next, I kept catching him watching me across rooms with an expression that suggested he was reconsidering a conclusion he'd already filed away. His scent would fluctuate when I entered a room, still sandalwood and smoke, but warmer somehow, more present. The first time I noticed it properly was a Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen with Liling, attempting to teach her how to make scrambled eggs without producing something that could be used to patch roads. She had set the heat too high again, and I was explaining for the third time why this was counterproductive. But higher heat is faster, she said, with the logic of someone who had never understood why efficiency and quality were sometimes in conflict. Faster and ruined. Low and slow. I leaned over the pan. The eggs need to, I stopped. Here, watch the texture. See how it starts to set? That's when you... Yes, exactly, move it. Oh. Her voice shifted into the tone of someone who had just seen a magic trick explained. Oh, that's why. That's why. She looked at the eggs with new respect. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at the eggs again and decided they were more interesting. Can I add cheese? In about 30 seconds. Yes. What if I add it now? Then the cheese melts into a situation rather than a garnish. What's the difference? Cheese should be visible. It's aesthetically important. She laughed, actually laughed, the sudden surprised kind, like she'd done it before she decided whether or not to. I didn't make a big deal of it. I just told her to watch the heat. Her honey cinnamon scent, usually sharp with suspicion, was warm and open for the first time. When I looked up, Wei Cheng-jun was in the doorway. He had his coffee. He was in the specific state of undress that suggested he'd come down early without planning to encounter anything interesting. No tie collar open, a man in the middle of his Saturday morning before it had become a Saturday morning. His sandalwood scent was thick, and there was something else underneath it now. Something almost appreciative. He was watching Liling plate her eggs with the focused pride of someone who had just invented scrambled eggs. And then he was watching me. His expression was the complicated one I couldn't read. Good morning, I said. Good morning, he said. Liling, noticing her father, said, Papa, I made eggs. Do you want some? She said it with the casualness of someone who hadn't really expected to want her father's approval, but was quietly checking anyway. Her scent was hopeful, even if her face was trying not to show it. Wei Cheng-jun looked at the eggs. Yes, he said, with a quality of mild surprise that suggested this was not how Saturday mornings usually went. Thank you. Liling served them with the focus of a professional. I poured myself tea and did not make eye contact with my husband, because I was increasingly aware that Wei Cheng-jun looking at me was doing something to my nervous system that I refused to examine. This was, I realized, going to be a whole other problem. The original novel had actually provided quite a lot of information about Wei Cheng-jun, which I had tried to absorb with a clinical detachment of a project manager reviewing a personnel file. Cold, corporate, a perfectionist who had built his company from a regional firm to a national empire in 8 years. Alpha. Married Shen Meiyong for reasons the narrative hand-waved. Spent the first 3 years of the story ignoring his family entirely. Spent the latter portion discovering too late that he had wanted to protect something he'd failed to value. In other words, a man who did not know what he had until it was gone. Which was very classically tragic. Which was also the standard arc of every oblivious male lead in every story I'd ever consumed during my lunch breaks at a job that had ultimately killed me. My point was, I recognized the type. And more specifically, I recognized the specific way he was starting to look at me, like something had shifted in a picture he thought was settled, and he wasn't sure yet if he needed to recalibrate or if he was imagining it. His scent was doing something complicated, shifting towards something warmer, more curious. The problem was that Wei Qingjun was objectively quite attractive. The severe statue quality had the specific effect of making small moments of warmth disproportionately impactful. I had watched him once spend 10 minutes helping Zainab with a stuck shoelace, and the memory had lodged itself in my brain in a way I found professionally inconvenient. System, I said one evening, alone in my room. Am I supposed to be having feelings about the husband? The system does not track host emotional responses. That's not a no. System neither confirms nor denies. You know what? Never mind. The original character Shen Meiyong did develop feelings for Wei Qingjun in certain novel routes. However, these were typically depicted as tragic and unrequited. I didn't ask for that information. The system provides relevant context proactively. The context is not helpful. The system disagrees. Dark points are also available through romantic pursuit that leads to rejection. Absolutely not, I said. We are not doing that. Noted. Host has declined the romance arc. Thank you for. I didn't. I stared at the ceiling. You know what? Fine. Thank you for now. I thought about career changes. The incident with the school happened 4 months in. Jinyu had passed his exam with a score that was apparently unprecedented for that particular assessment, which I discovered only when the school called. He had apparently mentioned to his homeroom teacher that his stepfather had helped him study. The teacher, who had met the original Shen Meiyong at school events and formed a complete picture of him, was reportedly confused enough to call and verify. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I took it in my study. Mr. Shen, the teacher said, I wanted to reach out because Jinyu mentioned you've been helping him with exam preparation. A pause, the pause of someone who had started a sentence without knowing how to finish it. I wanted to thank you. He did the work, I said. I just showed him he was second-guessing himself. Another pause. He's shown a marked improvement this semester. Not just academically, his engagement with classmates has improved as well. He seems... A longer pause. More settled. I thought about Jinyu at the kitchen table 3 months ago, sitting like he was waiting for something terrible to happen. I thought about Jinyu 2 nights ago, explaining to Zainab why frogs were important to the ecosystem with the specific enthusiasm of someone who had recently decided that enthusiasm was safe to show. The green tea and steel in his scent had softened into something warmer. I'm glad to hear it, I said. After I hung up, I sat for a moment and thought. This was not in the original novel. Of course it wasn't. Jinyu was cold and distrustful and building walls in the original novel. None of this had happened. And in 3 years, I was supposed to die. I pushed the thought down and went to find Zainab, who had asked that morning if we could plant something in the garden. Dark points plus 25. Host ignored the school meeting to further manipulate the children's emotional attachment. I took a phone call, I thought. I didn't even go to the school. 6 months in, things had changed enough that the change was visible even from the inside. The children, who had started as 3 separate units of wary survival, had become somehow a family. Not performatively. Not because they decided to. Just incrementally, the way things change when the conditions are right. Their sense had shifted too, less guarded, more open. The house smelled like something alive now, something growing. Jinyu had started eating breakfast with us instead of taking a tray to his room. He had a dry sense of humor that appeared occasionally like a rare weather event, usually at Liling's expense. When he laughed, it was a rare, unexpected thing that made his whole face change, and I found myself cataloging the sound like something precious. Liling had stopped coming to breakfast like she was preparing for combat. She had also learned to make 3 dishes, each of which she would describe in terms of their technical complexity rather than admit that she was proud of them. She was, I privately thought, going to be terrifying when she was an adult, and I meant that as the highest possible compliment. Zainab had started talking. Not that he hadn't talked before, but there's a difference between a child who answers questions and a child who comes to find you because he has something to tell you. By month 6, Zainab had opinions about the garden, strong feelings about which of his rocks were most interesting, and a habit of inserting himself into conversations to offer the 7-year-old perspective. The frog you found is probably European, Jinyu told him at dinner one evening, with the authority of someone who had recently looked this up. He's Chinese, Zainab said firmly. Frogs don't have nationalities. He lives in our garden. The garden is in China. He's Chinese. That's not how. Baba, is the frog Chinese? 3 faces turned to me, with varying degrees of investment in this question. The frog, I said carefully, has not expressed a preference. You can't ask a frog, Liling said. You also can't assign it one without its consent, I said. Zainab considered this. His name is Dumpling, he said. I'll ask him tomorrow. Good plan. Dark points, host subtly encouraged division among the children regarding the frog's cultural identity. I was fairly confident the system was making things up at this point. Wei Qingjun had become a different problem by month 6. He was home more often. I wasn't sure when that had started, gradually, then suddenly, like most changes. He had begun appearing at dinner with a frequency that suggested intentionality. He asked questions about the children's school, about what Zainab was growing in the garden, about Liling's cooking project. The children were cautiously pleased about this and trying very hard not to show it. Their sense, though warm, open, hopeful, betrayed them completely. I was trying very hard not to think about the fact that Wei Qingjun, when he was not being a walking corporate asset, had a voice that did something inconvenient to my equilibrium. That his scent, when he was in a good mood, was warm and rich like wood smoke, and I found myself breathing it in more than I should. The crux of the issue arrived one evening when he knocked on my study door. Come in, I said. He came in. He stood in the doorway for a moment with the specific quality of a man who had made a decision but wasn't sure yet about the execution. His scent was turbulent, uncertain, which was unusual for him. I wanted to ask you something, he said. All right. The children. He paused. They're different. Different how? Better. Another pause. Jinyu used to look at me like he was calculating whether I was a threat. He doesn't do that anymore. Liling actually talks to me. Zainab. He stopped struggling. Zainab comes to find me. With me or with you? I waited. What did you do? I made them do their homework, I said, and sleep at regular hours, and eat vegetables. Wei Qingjun looked at me with an expression that suggested this was not the answer he'd been expecting. That's it. That, and I considered how to say this. I paid attention to them, to the specific things they were struggling with, rather than just whether they were performing to expectations. You paid attention to them, he repeated. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. I haven't, he said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't quite a confession. It sat in the middle of both. No, I said, because lying would have been unkind. He took that without flinching, which I noted. His scent was shifting, moving towards something raw. I'd like to start, he said. I looked at him across the study. He looked back at me with the expression of a man who was accustomed to identifying problems and fixing them, and had just identified one that was going to require something other than his usual methods. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Something almost vulnerable. Sunday breakfast, I said. Be there. That's a start. All right. He left. His scent lingered in the room, sandalwood and smoke, and something else underneath it now, something almost like gratitude. Dark points plus 15. Host manipulated alpha husband into developing attachment to family unit, thereby increasing eventual emotional devastation. I told him to come to breakfast, I thought. This system is insane. Sunday breakfast was predictably awkward. Wei Cheng-jun sat at the table, looking like a man who had arrived at a meeting without the briefing materials. The children looked at him with various calibrations of hopefulness that they were each trying to disguise as other things. Their scents, though, were telling. Jinyu's green tea and steel was warmer, Liling's honey cinnamon was bright with something like nervous hope, and Zainab's milk vanilla was so open it almost hurt to breathe. I put eggs and toast in front of everyone. Papa, Zainab said after approximately 45 seconds of silence. Do you know about frogs? Somewhat, Wei Cheng-jun said. Dumpling is European or Chinese. We're trying to decide. Dumpling? My frog. Baba says dumpling hasn't expressed a preference. Wei Cheng-jun looked at me over his coffee. I shrugged minutely. I would need to see the frog, he said finally, before I could give an opinion. Zainab lit up. After breakfast, Wei Cheng-jun agreed. Dark points plus 10. Host engineered family bonding scenario to deepen eventual emotional impact of host's death. I told the system mentally to go sit in a corner. Year 1 became year 2. I had not expected to feel time passing the way I did, not as a countdown to something terrible, but as something rich and accumulating. There were rhythms now. Sunday breakfasts, which Wei Cheng-jun attended with increasing ease. Liling's cooking lessons, which had expanded to include actual cuisine, rather than just survival skills. Jinyu's occasional late-night study sessions, where he'd appear in the doorway of my study on the pretense of needing a second opinion, and then stay for 2 hours talking about everything else. Zainab's ongoing diplomatic relations with the garden, which had expanded to include 3 frogs, a family of sparrows he decided were his personal responsibility, and a tortoise of mysterious origin that he called General Pebble. The bonding moments were accumulating, building something solid underneath us. And something else was shifting too, something between me and Wei Cheng-jun. It was small things at first. The way he'd bring me tea without being asked, the kind I liked, not the kind he drank. The way he'd linger in doorways when I was with the children, watching with an expression I couldn't quite read. The way his sandalwood scent would warm when I entered a room, would wrap around me like something possessive and protective at the same time. I was not going to think about it. I'd also accumulated a concerning amount of dark points, which the system reported with the enthusiasm of a sales tracker approaching quarterly targets. Total dark points, 1,247. Progress toward mission completion, 41%. System, I said one evening, alone in my room. I need you to tell me what happens at mission completion. Host is not. I've been in this novel for over a year, I said. I have 3 children who have started putting drawings of me on the refrigerator. I have a husband who asks me about my day. I have a 7-year-old who introduced me to a tortoise as the person who fixed everything. I need to know what happens at mission completion. The system was quiet. At mission completion, it said, and its tone was slightly different, softer somehow. The host returns to their original world. The room was very quiet. Returns, I said. As in leaves. Correct. The mission objective was always to rehabilitate the novel's trajectory by improving outcomes for the main characters. Once sufficient dark points are accumulated, and the timeline has been sufficiently altered. The timeline's already altered, I said. It's been altering for over a year. The original story is unrecognizable. Yes. That is the function of the mission. And then I leave. Yes. I sat with that. I thought about the car accident, which was apparently still in the timeline. The system had mentioned it once early on as a fixed plot point. I thought about what it would mean for 3 children who had spent a year rebuilding trust to lose something again. I thought about what it would mean for Wei Cheng-jun, who had slowly, incrementally started to become something other than a stranger. The car accident, I said. Is that also part of the exit mechanism? The system was quiet again. Longer this time. That information is classified. System. The car accident is a transition point. That is all the system can say at this time. That is an extremely concerning answer. The system acknowledges that the host may find this concerning. I find it more than concerning. You finiti, you stopped. I took a breath. I find it a reason to make the next 2 years count. The system acknowledges host's response. Something in the system's tone had changed. I didn't examine it too closely. I just filed it away with everything else I was choosing not to fully process yet and went downstairs. Because Liling had texted me. She had discovered texting as a form of communication and had taken to it with gusto, to tell me that she had possibly overestimated the soup situation and required consultation. Year 2 settled differently than year 1. In year 1, everything had been new. The children learning to trust me. The rhythms of the household. The system, and I negotiating our arrangement. In year 2, the newness wore away to something more durable. Jinyu turned 17 and became, without anyone quite noticing, someone who laughed regularly. He had his father's height and his father's capacity for focus, but he developed something Wei Qingjun hadn't had at 17, the ability to ask for help without framing it as a failure. I took some quiet credit for this. His green tea and steel scent had softened into something warmer, more open. Liling at 14 was a force of nature, with opinions about everything and the ability to back them up. She had started a small catering venture among her classmates, discreetly, because she refused to admit it was sentimental, and had sent me a photo of her first payment, 40 yuan from a classmate's birthday celebration, with the caption "Business is business" and approximately 17 exclamation points. Her honey cinnamon scent was bold and bright, and when she laughed, the whole house felt lighter. Zainab at 9 had developed the specific charisma of a small person who genuinely believed the world was interesting and made other people see it that way, too. He had told me recently, with complete seriousness, that General Pebble had learned to recognize his voice. I had not questioned this. His scent was still gentle milk and vanilla, but it had more depth now, more confidence. Wei Qingjun was the most complicated change. He was my husband in some sense that had stopped being administrative and started being real. He had learned, over 2 years, to be present in a way he hadn't been. He was still corporate at work, still efficient and cool under pressure. At home, he was different in the way that people are different when they've decided home is real. He had started watching me in the specific way that meant he was building up to saying something. I had started becoming preemptively nervous about this. His scent would shift when I was near, warmer, richer, more present, and I found myself responding to it in ways I couldn't control. My omega instincts, which I had been studiously ignoring for 2 years, were starting to wake up. "You're avoiding something," Liling informed me one afternoon, with the directness of a 14-year-old who had decided she was old enough to make observations. "I'm not avoiding anything. You've reorganized the study shelves 3 times this week. I have a system. Papa watches you, and you immediately find something to look at that isn't him. I'm very busy. Baba." She looked at me with an expression that meant she knew exactly what she was seeing and had decided to be polite about it because she was feeling generous. "You know it's okay, right? I don't know what you're referring to." "Yes, you do." I looked at the middle distance. "He brought you tea yesterday," she said. "You said thank you and then immediately left the room. I had somewhere to be. You reorganized the bookshelves." "I have a system," I said with less conviction than before. Liling made the face of someone who was being very, very patient. "Baba, he brought you tea on purpose. He doesn't even drink that kind." I had noticed that. I had tried very hard not to notice that. "You should stop organizing the bookshelves," she said, and picked up her textbook and left me to my crisis. Dark points +8, host's emotional unavailability may negatively impact the children's modeling of healthy relationships. Not helping, I told the system. The system is aware. The conversation with Wei Qingjun happened on a Tuesday evening. Zainab was asleep. Jinyu was studying. Liling was in her room, probably aware that something was about to happen and having arranged herself accordingly. Wei Cheng-jun found me on the back porch, looking at the garden, which was how I handled things I didn't know how to handle, by going somewhere with plants and breathing. His scent reached me before he did, warm sandalwood and smoke, and I felt my own scent respond, cedar and winter air blooming in response. He stood next to me. We looked at the garden. I wanted to tell you something, he said. You've been working up to it for a while, I said. Go ahead. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't know who you are. I went still. He stopped. I know you're Shenmei. I know we've been married for 4 years. I know this house, these children. But the person who's been here for the past 2 years, a pause. I don't recognize him from the person I thought I knew. People change, I said carefully. They do. But this isn't. He turned to look at me. This isn't gradual change. It's like someone switched the lights on. I looked at the garden. General Pebble was visible near the stone wall, moving with the unhurried dignity of a tortoise who had places to be. I don't know how to explain it, I said. Which was true. I don't need an explanation. His voice was quiet. I just wanted you to know that I notice. A pause that had the quality of something carefully constructed. That I'm grateful for what you've done for this family. For what you've done for... He stopped again. For you, I said because someone had to say it. He was silent. The garden was very still. His sandalwood scent was thick around me, and I could feel my omega instincts responding, wanting to lean into him, wanting. Wei Cheng-jun, I said. Yes. I stopped. I thought about the system and the dark points and the mission completion and the car accident that was apparently a transition point. I thought about 3 children who had put my portrait on a refrigerator and this man who had just used the word grateful. I'm glad, I said, that things are different. Are you? He was watching me. Yes. Something shifted in his expression. His scent changed, still sandalwood, but warmer now, more present. Then I'd like to keep making them different, he said. If that's acceptable. I looked at him. He looked at me. That's acceptable, I said. The air between us was charged with something I didn't have words for. His scent was wrapping around me, and I could feel my own responding, cedar and winter air opening toward him like something blooming. Dark points plus 30. Host engaged in emotional intimacy with Alpha, deepening romantic entanglement and maximizing future grief potential. You know what? I thought at the system. Fine. 30 points. Year 3 felt different from the first moment. I couldn't explain it, not emotionally, because emotionally I understood it perfectly. It was the last year. Whatever came next, this was the last year of the version of this life that I'd been building. Something in that knowledge made every morning sharper, every meal more vivid, every ordinary moment something I noticed with the specific attention of someone who knew the duration was finite. The children, who were perceptive in the way that children are perceptive when they've learned to pay attention, picked up on something. You seem sad, Zainab said, sitting in my study in the manner of someone who had noticed something and decided to address it. His scent was worried underneath the usual warm vanilla. I'm not sad. Your face is doing the thing. What thing? He made a face that was apparently meant to be an impression of mine. It involved slightly lowered eyebrows and a very subtle tightening of the mouth and was horrifyingly accurate. I'm just thinking, I said. About what? About the fact that in the original novel, this year ends with a car accident. About the fact that the system won't tell me whether that's still happening. About the fact that I am deeply unwilling to leave General Pebble. That was always a safe topic. Zainab lit up. He learned a new thing. Tell me. He told me. I listened, and I thought about how this small, specific thing was something I would miss with a completeness that didn't have language. I confronted the system in month 9 of year 3. Tell me about the car accident, host. Don't tell me it's classified. We're 3 months out. I need to know. The system was quiet for longer than usual. The car accident is a fixed narrative event in the novel's framework, it said. It serves as the transition point between the host's initial mission phase and what? And the secondary phase. What is the secondary phase? The secondary phase was not initially included in the host's briefing because the probability of reaching it was considered low. You didn't think I'd succeed. Initial modeling suggested the host would either fail to accumulate sufficient points or would cause narrative deterioration instead. The host has significantly exceeded point targets and produced narrative outcomes that are unprecedented in system records. What does the secondary phase involve? If the host completes the primary mission and the transition event occurs, the host will be given the option to return. The room was very still. Return, I said. To here. Yes. Not to your original world. The original world is no longer accessible. The host's original body experienced biological death. There is no body to return to. I sat with that. I had known this technically, but I hadn't let myself think about it. So when you said returns to their original world, that information was inaccurate. The system apologizes. The system provided imprecise information to maintain host motivation. That's called lying. The system. You lied to me, I said, my voice very even. For 2 years. About what was going to happen. Yes. Breathe in and out. And the car accident. The transition event will occur. It is not avoidable within the current framework. However, the duration of host's absence has been minimized based on mission performance. How long? Indeterminate. Days. Most likely weeks at most. They'll think I'm dead. Yes. 4 weeks. The system acknowledges this is devastating. I close my eyes. The word you're looking for is devastating. The secondary phase accounts for this possibility. Host's return is designed to interrupt that outcome. And if they've already, the system has made provisions. I open my eyes. You made provisions. The system has been monitoring outcomes for the entirety of the mission and has taken steps to minimize the damage window. The transition event cannot be avoided, but its aftermath can be managed. You could have told me this 2 years ago. Yes. Why didn't you? A long pause. Because the system was not certain host would stay. I stared at the ceiling. If you told me the truth from the start, I said slowly, that my original world was gone, that this could be permanent, host might have chosen not to engage fully with the mission. The uncertainty was used as a protective mechanism. Protective of what? Of the children. Of the potential outcomes. Of a pause. Of host. I thought about that for a long time. Then if I come back after the accident, will they know about all of this? The system will facilitate disclosure. The host's true origin, the mission, all of it. It will be knowable if host chooses to share it. And they won't. I stopped. They won't hate me for not being real. The system cannot predict emotional responses. However, it paused, and its voice was different. Gentler somehow. In the system's assessment, the host has been entirely real. The mission framework was a mechanism. What grew within it was not. I sat in my study for a very long time after that. Then I went to have dinner with my family. The car accident happened on a Wednesday. I had dropped Zainab off at school. The sky was the particular blue of late autumn, the kind that looks like something painted. I was thinking about what to make for dinner. Liling had recently been experimenting with cold noodle dishes and had requested a verdict. Then the truck came through the intersection. And then nothing. Then what? Then transition event completed. Secondary phase initiated. Estimated return window, 9 to 16 days. 16 days is not minimal. I informed the system. The system notes host's feedback. They're going to. I thought about what I knew. About Jinyu at 18, with a businessman's ruthlessness still available inside him. About Liling at 16, fierce and protective, and armed now with actual capability. About Zainab at 11, who had learned that good things could be real, and whose world was about to show him the other side of that lesson. About Wei Cheng. How bad is it going to get? The system is monitoring. Intervention protocols are in place. That's not. Jinyu has taken control of the school's network and sent 17,000 emails. To whom? The system did not specify. Presumably everyone. Liling has started 3 things that the system is classifying as probably legal incidents. Zainab has not eaten in 2 days. Wei Cheng-jun has not left the house. How long have I been gone? 47 hours. They've been in free fall for 47 hours. The system notes that host's impact on the family unit was significant. Get me back faster. The system is working on it. Work harder. Yes. I came back on day 11. The specifics of how I will not attempt to explain, because the system's explanation involved multi-dimensional narrative theory, and I had stopped following it approximately 40 seconds in. The relevant points were, I was alive. I was in a hospital. And the nurse who came in when I woke up made a sound that suggested she had been prepared for a significantly different outcome. I had approximately 4 minutes before someone called my family. I used 3 of them to have a brief internal reckoning with the fact that I had nearly been the source of a localized apocalypse. My scent was probably a mess, cedar and winter air gone sharp with stress. The 4th minute, Wei Cheng-jun walked in the door. He didn't say anything. He walked to the bed. He stood there. And he looked at me with an expression that I had no word for. Something past relief, past grief, past the point where any of those words were sufficient. His sandalwood scent hit me like a wall, and underneath it I could smell something else. Fear. Loss. Something raw and broken. Hi, I said. You, he stopped. I know. You were, he stopped again. He pressed his fingers to his eyes. His whole body was shaking. 11 days. I know. I'm sorry. You, he lowered his hand and looked at me. I had never seen Wei Cheng-jun look like this, stripped down to something undefended. His scent was ragged, his composure shattered. You cannot do that again. I'll do my best. That is not a sufficient promise. Wei Cheng-jun, tell me you're staying, he said. Tell me. Just. I'm staying, I said. I'm staying. He sat down on the edge of the bed. He put his head in his hands for a moment. Then he looked up at me. His scent was still ragged, but underneath it, something was starting to settle. Something that felt like hope. The children. I know. I'll talk to them. Jinyu sent 17,000 emails. I heard. To whom? The system didn't specify. I assume everyone. Something that was almost a laugh moved through his expression and disappeared. Liling. I heard about that too. Zainab. I know. My chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with the accident. I'll talk to him first. Wei Cheng-jun was quiet for a moment. What happened? The truck. The police said the physics were. I have something to tell you, I said. All of you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. He looked at me. Not yet, I said. When I'm out of here. When everyone is, I paused. When we're home. I'll explain everything. Everything. Everything, I said. From the beginning. His scent shifted, still uncertain, but moving towards something more steady. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. His fingers were warm, calloused, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. From the beginning, he repeated. From the beginning. The family meeting happened 3 days after I came home. I had seen the children individually first. Zainab had cried, then been angry at me for scaring him, then cried again, and then fallen asleep in my arms in a way that suggested he intended to remain there for the foreseeable future. His scent was exhausted, but underneath it, something was starting to heal. Liling had said, "You're not allowed to die," with the specific fury of someone who had decided to convert grief into policy. Her honey cinnamon scent was sharp with anger, but I could smell the fear underneath it. Jinyu had stood in the doorway of my room for a long moment, his green tea and steel scent turbulent, and then sat down next to the bed and started talking about nothing in particular, school, a paper he was working on, a book, and kept talking for 2 hours because he needed to hear his own voice and mine responding. Wei Qingjun had not left the room for the first night. By the third day, they were all ready to hear it. I could tell by the way they gathered, Jinyu sitting straight, Liling with her arms crossed but her defenses at half measure, Zainab pressed against my side like he was afraid I might disappear, Wei Qingjun in the chair across from me, with the attention of someone who had decided to hear whatever this was and deal with it. I want to tell you something that sounds impossible, I said. I need you to hear all of it before you decide what to think. I told him everything. Death by overwork. The system. The novel. This novel. Their story. The version that had existed before I arrived. What I'd been assigned to do. What I'd actually done. Why the dark points had kept adding up anyway. The car accident as a transition point. The system's lies. The secondary phase. The room was very quiet for a long time after I finished. We're in a novel, Jinyu said finally. You were, I said. I think the novel and the reality have been the same thing for a while now. The original me, Liling said. In the original story. What happened to her? She was angry, I said honestly. Fierce and protective and prone to self-destruction. Not the outcome she deserved. Liling uncrossed and recrossed her arms. And original Jinyu, she prompted. Similar. Capable, but isolated. He had your father's intelligence and none of his capacity to let people in. Jinyu was quiet. Zainab. I didn't answer immediately. Zainab looked up at me. He learned too early that good things don't last, I said. Zainab was quiet for a moment. Then, but they do. They do now. My chest did something complicated. They do now, I agreed. Wei Qingjun had been silent through all of this. I looked at him. The system sent you here, he said. To be cruel to my children. Yes. And you, he stopped. You decided folding laundry was cruel? The system had a very expansive definition. Something moved through his expression. He stopped again. The tea. The breakfast. When I started, he looked at me with an expression that was going to make me do something embarrassing to my composure. Was any of that? None of that, I said, was the system. The room was very still. None of it, he said. None of it, I confirmed. That was you, and that was me, and that was entirely real. Zainab made a small, satisfied noise and leaned heavier against my side. His scent was warm, safe, content. Liling uncrossed her arms. So what happens now? I don't know, I said. The system says mission complete. I don't know if it has more assignments. If it's going to. Post. Everyone in the room startled. Liling looked around. The system is here? The system is always here. System, I said, I think you owe my family an explanation. Agreed. The system wishes to make an announcement to all of you. A pause. Mission completion has been confirmed. Host has successfully altered the narrative trajectory of the novel Crimson Bonds of Sorrow, resulting in the rehabilitation of all primary character arcs. The original tragic ending has been averted. All characters are proceeding toward positive outcomes. And, I said, what's next? There is no next assignment. What? The system operated on the expectation that Host would complete the mission and transfer out. Host has remained. The novel's original ending has been overwritten. The characters, a longer pause, are no longer bound by their narrative fates. You're saying we're free? Jinyu said with the precision of someone who needed to understand the exact terms. The system is saying that the story is no longer a story. It is simply a life. Zainab looked up at me. Does that mean you're staying? Yes, I said. Forever. I looked at Wei Qingjun, who was looking at me with an expression that I finally had a word for. Home. That's the plan, I said. The system is pleased to report that this outcome was. It paused, and its voice had something in it I had never heard before. Something that was, if I was not mistaken, fond. In fact, the intended outcome all along. You, I told the system, are the most complicated entity I have ever dealt with. And that includes my former HR department. The system takes that as a compliment. Zainab giggled. Liling rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Jinyu's expression was still serious, but there was warmth in his scent. Green tea and steel softened to something almost tender. Wei Cheng-jun reached for my hand, and I let him take it. The system pinged one last time, soft and satisfied. And then it was silent. There's a particular quality to ordinary Tuesday evenings that I never appreciated when I was Liam Chin, senior director. Last meal instant ramen, died at his desk. This is what a Tuesday looks like now. Liling is in the kitchen, making something she will describe as an experiment, and which smells extremely good. She has started a small catering business that she insists is purely financial, despite the fact that she named it after an inside joke I made about visible cheese. She is 17 and terrifying, and once made a grown man apologize for interrupting her by simply looking at him. Her scent is honey and cinnamon, warm and bright, and it fills the whole house. I am very proud of her. Jinyu is in his room studying, which he has always done, but he's left the door open. This is the thing that matters. His door is open, and music is playing, and occasionally he says something to Liling through the wall, and she says something back. He's 19 and has his father's seriousness and his own hard-won capacity for warmth. He has started mentioning a classmate named Xiaofangyi with a specific frequency that means I should probably have a conversation with him soon. His scent has settled into something steady, green tea and steel, mellowed with trust. Zainab is at the kitchen table, explaining to General Pebble, who has lived here for 3 years and shows no signs of leaving, that tomorrow is a school day and therefore an early bedtime is required. General Pebble is demonstrating the philosophical acceptance of a being who has no bedtime. Zainab is 12 now and has decided he wants to be a biologist. I think he'll be extraordinary. His milk and vanilla scent is the warmest thing in the house. Wei Cheng-jun is next to me on the back porch with his tea, the kind he doesn't drink that he started buying because I do. His shoulder is against mine. We're watching the garden in the specific, comfortable silence of people who have said enough things to each other that silence is also a language. His sandalwood scent is wrapped around me like a second skin, and I can feel my own cedar and winter air responding, opening toward him like something blooming. You're thinking, he says. Always. About what? I think about Liam Chen, who died at his desk, who thought he would trade for the life he was building and never got to. I think about Shan Meiyang, who was written as a villain, who was given every circumstance that creates monsters and was never offered anything different. I think about the system which lied to me for 2 years and also, I now believe, did it out of something like care. I think about dark points, of which I apparently accumulated thousands for the crime of helping children with their homework, cooking eggs on Sundays, introducing a workaholic to the concept of being present, and asking a 7-year-old what he wanted to name his frog. Cheese, I say specifically. Whether it should always be visible. Wei Cheng-jun turns to look at me with an expression that means he knows I'm not telling him everything, and has decided to find this charming rather than frustrating. His hand finds mine, thumb moving across my knuckles. The touch sends a shiver through me, my omega instincts purring in contentment. And your conclusion? Yes, I say. Unconditionally. Inside, Liling calls, dinner is ready, and it is a masterpiece, and everyone should acknowledge this immediately. Coming. Zainab yells, abandoning his philosophical debate with General Pebble, and sprinting toward the kitchen. Coming. I call. Wei Cheng-jun's hand finds mine. Liam, he says, because he started using my real name sometimes privately like a thing that belongs only here, only to us. Yes. I'm glad the truck happened. I look at him. That's a terrible thing to say. I point out. I know. His thumb moves across my knuckles, and I can feel the bond between us, the mark he gave me in the hospital, the connection that binds us together now. I'm still glad. Inside, Liling yells. I said immediately. The cheese, I tell him, is visible. He laughs. I stand up and pull him with me toward the noise and the light in the kitchen where our family is waiting. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I feel a small, satisfied ping. No dark points required. Then,